Have you ever told yourself you will start meditating when life finally gets quieter? Have you ever noticed that the more you wait for the right moment, the more your mind stays crowded? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about a kind of meditation that does not depend on a perfect room, perfect mood, perfect schedule, or perfect silence. The first idea is that real practice is not something you do only when everything is calm. Real practice is what you do when everything is not calm, because that is where your karma is created through your reactions. The second idea is that awakening is not a trophy you win by escaping the world. Awakening is the skill of meeting the world with a clear mind, a compassionate heart, and steady discipline, no matter where you are. Let me tell you a story that begins with someone who genuinely wanted peace, but kept postponing it like a dream that must wait until later. This person loved the idea of meditation. They watched talks, saved clips, read short quotes, and even told friends they were going to start. But every time they tried, they ran into the same problem. Life was loud. Their room was messy. Their phone kept buzzing. Their schedule kept shifting. Their mind kept replaying conversation. Their body felt restless. So they would say, "Not now. This weekend. When school is lighter. When work slows down. When I feel more stable." The strange thing was that their life never became quiet enough to meet their condition. Even on days when they had time, their mind was still racing. Even on vacations, their thoughts followed them. Even when they sat in silence, their inner noise filled the silence like a storm moving into an empty valley. One night they admitted the truth to themselves. "I am waiting for a quiet life so I can practice. But maybe practice is what creates a quieter life." That thought scared them, because it meant there was no more hiding behind conditions. It meant they would have to practice inside the messy reality of being human. The next day, something happened that looked small but became a turning point. They were on a bus, or a train, or sitting in a waiting area, and they noticed everyone around them had the same posture. Head down, fingers scrolling, eyes tired, bodies present but minds somewhere else. They looked at their own screen and realized they were doing it too. Not because they were weak, but because modern life trains the mind to escape every empty space. At that moment, they remembered a simple teaching they once heard, the kind that sounds almost too easy. Meditation is not a place. Meditation is a way of being. They decided to test it right there, in public, with noise around them. Without making it obvious, they did not close their eyes dramatically. They did not change their posture into a performance. They simply did one quiet thing. They felt their breath. Just one inhale and one exhale. Fully noticed. The mind immediately complained, "This is pointless. You cannot meditate here. It is too noisy." They noticed the complaint as a thought, then returned to breath again. Another thought arrived. "People will notice you." They noticed it, then returned again. Another thought arrived. "You should be using this time to plan." They noticed it, then returned again. A surprising thing happened. The world did not become silent, but their relationship to the noise changed. The bus sounds were still there, but they were not inside those sounds. The chatter was still there, but it did not pull them as strongly. Their body felt a little less tight. Their shoulders dropped slightly. Their jaw softened. They realized that meditation anywhere might not mean perfect calm. It might mean a small return to presence. Again and again, wherever you are. That small return was the first seed. Later that day, they met a friend who looked unusually steady. Not happy in a loud way, but steady in a quiet way. The friend did not seem rushed. The friend did not seem reactive. The friend listened more than they spoke. Their eyes looked like they had space. Our person asked them how they were so calm. The friend smiled and said, "I stopped treating meditation like an appointment. I started treating it like a habit of returning." Our person asked what that meant. The friend said, "I practice in tiny moments. One breath before I open a message. One breath before I answer a question. One breath when I feel anger rise. One breath when I feel fear tighten my chest. One breath when I catch myself chasing approval. I do not need to sit for an hour to change my karma. I need to stop reacting blindly. That sentence hit hard because it exposed a hidden truth. Most suffering does not come from what happens. It comes from what we do inside our mind when something happens. A harsh comment lands and you replay it for hours. A mistake happens and you punish yourself all night. A delay appears and you get angry at everyone. A fear shows up and you start controlling everything. These are the moments where karma is created. Cause and effect in your nervous system, in your relationships, in your destiny. If you can change your response in those moments, you change your life. Our person wanted to believe it, but part of them doubted. They said, "But my mind is too busy. I cannot switch it off." The friend said, "Do not switch it off. See it." Then the friend taught a simple method that could be done anywhere. When a thought appears, label it thinking. Then return to sensation. Breath, feet, hands, anything real in the present. Our person wrote it that evening while washing dishes. They felt the water on their hands. I thought appeared. You are wasting time. They labeled it thinking. They returned to the sensation of warm water. I thought appeared. Tomorrow will be stressful. Thinking. I thought appeared. Why did you say that earlier? Thinking. Return. At first it felt like juggling, but after a while they noticed something important. The thoughts were still there, but they were less sticky. They were not drowning in them as much. This was not a spiritual miracle. It was a practical shift. The mind can produce thoughts forever, but you do not have to hold each thought like it is a command. The next test came the following day. They were in a conversation that triggered them. Someone spoke in a tone that felt dismissive. The old pattern rose instantly. Heat in the chest, tightness in the throat, the urge to defend, the urge to attack, the urge to prove worth. Normally they would react quickly and create a chain of consequences. They would say something sharp. The other person would react. The situation would escalate. Then guilt would arrive. Then rumination would begin. Then sleep would be worse. Then the next day would be heavier. This time, the memory of practice created a gap. Not a big gap. A small gap. One breath. In that breath, they noticed the sensation of anger before turning it into a story. They noticed the fear underneath. Fear of being disrespected. Fear of being unseen. Fear of not being valued. Seeing the fear softened the anger enough to change their words. They spoke more slowly. They asked for clarification. They set a boundary without cruelty. The conversation stayed human. Afterward, they felt something new. Respect for themselves. Not because they won an argument, but because they did not abandon their awareness. This is where meditation anywhere becomes real. It is not about sitting on a cushion. It is about not losing yourself in the moment that used to steal you. As days passed, our person began building a practice that moved with them through ordinary life. When they woke up, one breath before looking at the phone. When they brushed their teeth, feeling the sensation instead of thinking 10 steps ahead. When they walked, feeling feet contact the ground. When they ate, tasting the first bite fully. When they felt anxious, locating it in the body rather than fighting it. When they felt low, offering kindness rather than shame. They began to understand that a calm mind is not forced. A calm mind is cultivated. And cultivation is always about repetition. What you repeat becomes you. If you repeat worry, the mind becomes trained to worry quickly. If you repeat judgment, the mind becomes trained to judge instantly. If you repeat scrolling, the mind becomes trained to escape every empty space. If you repeat returning, the mind becomes trained to come back. That is karma as habit. That is destiny as repetition. Then something deeper began to happen. Our person noticed that their constant restlessness was not only about noise. It was also about craving. The craving for certainty. The craving for approval. The craving to be special. the craving to avoid discomfort. They saw how often they reached for the phone not because they needed information, but because they wanted relief. They saw how often they tried to control others' opinions so they could feel safe. They saw how often they chased perfection because they feared being ordinary. This is where wisdom enters. Wisdom is not only calming down. Wisdom is seeing why you cannot calm down. So they asked themselves a new question in the middle of daily life. What am I trying to avoid right now? Sometimes the answer was boredom. Sometimes it was sadness. Sometimes it was fear. Sometimes it was loneliness. Sometimes it was the uncomfortable truth that they needed to change something in their life. They learned that meditation anywhere is also the courage to feel what you have been avoiding. Not to drown in it, but to hold it with compassion. They started using a simple compassionate phrase whenever a hard feeling arrived. This is here. I can breathe with it. I do not have to punish myself for it. That compassion mattered because a harsh inner voice keeps the nervous system on alert. A nervous system on alert cannot settle. A mind that does not feel safe keeps searching for threats. Compassion creates safety. Safety creates clarity. Clarity creates wiser choices. Wiser choices create better karma. Better karma creates a lighter destiny. This is not theory. It is the chain you can feel inside your body when you practice. Then another shift appeared. They stopped believing that meditation had to look a certain way. They stopped trying to perform peace. They stopped chasing a perfect spiritual identity. They became more ordinary, and in becoming more ordinary, they became more free. They could meditate while walking. They could meditate while waiting. They could meditate while doing chores. They could meditate while feeling nervous before an important moment. They could meditate while feeling anger. By not throwing the anger, they could meditate while feeling sadness. By not turning sadness into shame, they realized that the world is not a problem to escape. The world is the training hall. If you only meditate when life is quiet, you are practicing in easy mode. If you practice in the middle of noise, pressure, temptation, and emotion, you are building real stability. That stability is what people call inner peace. Inner peace does not mean nothing hurts. Inner peace means you stop adding extra suffering. Inner peace means you stop multiplying one pain into 10 pains. Inner peace means you can be present with life without being dragged by every wave. Now let me bring the story to a moment that many people will recognize, because it is where practice becomes urgent. One night, our person felt overwhelmed. Too many responsibilities, too many expectations, too many unfinished tasks. Their mind started racing. They could feel the spiral forming. They wanted to escape. They wanted to numb out. They wanted to shut everything off. Instead, they did something simple. They stood up and walked slowly across the room. They felt each step. They inhaled slowly and exhaled slowly. They noticed thoughts arrive and labeled them thinking. They kept walking for 5 minutes. At the end, the problems were still there, but their mind was less chaotic. And because their mind was less chaotic, they could choose one small wise action instead of collapsing. They drank water. They wrote down one next step. They went to sleep. This was a small victory, but it was a real one, because it changed the cause. And when you change the cause, the effect changes. That is why the idea of meditating anywhere matters. It saves you in moments when you would otherwise drown in your own mind. Now I want to speak directly to you. If you keep waiting for the perfect conditions to meditate, you may wait forever. Life is not designed to become perfectly quiet. Life is designed to change. So practice must move with change. Here is a simple way to start. Right now, without making it dramatic. Feel your breath for one inhale and one exhale. Notice one thought. Label it thinking. Return to breath. That is it. Then do it again later. When you are triggered. One breath before replying. One breath before scrolling. One breath when you feel shame rise. One breath when you feel anger tighten your chest. One breath when you feel fear telling you to control everything. Each breath is a small return, and small return become awakening. I also want to share a personal style reflection to close. Many people believe meditation is something separate from real life, like a luxury activity for calm people. But the people who need meditation most are the people whose minds are busy, whose lives are stressful, whose emotions are intense. Practice is not a reward for being calm. Practice is how you learn calm. I have seen people change their entire relationships just by learning to pause. One pause prevents a harsh sentence. One pause prevents an impulsive message. One pause prevents a night of rumination. One pause prevents a chain of regret. That is how karma shifts. And the most beautiful part is that you do not need to wait for a perfect life to begin. You begin, and the life begins to feel more workable. So tell me in the comments, where is the hardest place for you to stay present? Is it during conversations, during study, during work, during conflict, during loneliness, or right before sleep? And what small bell could remind you to return? A phone notification, a door handle, a sip of water, a step, a breath. If you want more long-form storytelling and practical teachings about wisdom, karma, and real daily practice, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment to support the community. And if you want to support the channel in a deeper way, consider joining the membership so we can keep making content that helps people build calm, that does not depend on life being easy. Until next time, remember this: you do not need to escape the world to meditate. You only need to stop running from the present, one breath at a time, anywhere you are.